Hello everyone, Tenji here. As some of you are probably aware, and if you aren't aware, I have recently made a document compiling a list of my great many mistakes as a creator and person online in general. The reason I'm making this video is both to further explain myself for the document and its existence and what it entails, but also to let you know what has happened since the document was released and my plans moving forward. For clarification, this video is not to sway public opinion or explain away my actions or to excuse my actions. If you want to read the document yourself, feel free to read it. Bear in mind that the document has been slightly edited since its original release, specifically to remove the names and assumptions on my part, assuming either their intent regarding my actions or their belief of myself regarding my actions. With all that said, I think it's time I explain what the document is, why I made it, and what it means. While it is true that I've been regretting my behavior online for quite a while now, the creation of this document was well and truly sparked by a confession from a friend of mine. This friend had spoken out about their experience with people online sending them adult material while they themselves were underage. I thought this post was specifically referring to me, because I did in fact send them adult material while we were both underage. On that same post, one of my other friends who I had known for quite a few years mentioned me as a good example of a healthy online relationship, which, under the context of the rest of what I mentioned earlier, compounded my guilt and paranoia regarding the incident and made me reflect on just about everything bad I'd ever done online. Just the guilt of having flaws, countless flaws from over the years, and things I regret deeply, only to garner a newer audience that looks up to me and treats me like a respectable figure, and friends who still don't know the extent of what I've done. That guilt over everything I had done, over everything I had done to other people in the name or pursuit of my online audience, it all came crashing down on me. Deservedly so. I decided I wanted to do the right thing by all my friends, by everyone I hurt, and to release the document, compile every bad thing I've done, and let people decide for themselves whether or not they still want to associate with me. It also served as a sincere apology to all those who deserved it, including the audience, and a vow to do better. For those who cannot or do not want to read the document, here's a quick breakdown of everything it contains. Excluding the opening statement and the disclaimers, the document begins with my past as a not-safe-for-work artist on the forum pic.codeus.net. My not-safe-for-work page on Pic has been seen by various minors throughout the internet, from random people on pic.codeus.net to friends to people on pixelart.com, and I made a whole ARG about it. This took place at roughly 2018 to early 2019, back when I was 16 years old. I'm only clarifying my age here to better give context for my thought process at the time. My age, while does help factor in for the cause, is not a valid excuse by any extent. The next piece of the document brings up an occurrence that happened last year. An online art acquaintance of mine had posted some slightly suggestive-looking, non-nudity, non-sexual artwork to pixelart.com. The artwork depicted a furry character with Barbie anatomy, which means the character looks nude but has no nipples, genitalia, or anything of the sort. A younger user then said that they didn't feel the art was appropriate for the website. Instead of respecting the kids' boundaries or allowing them to make pretty valid criticism regarding this kind of artwork, I instead jumped in to defend my friend by downplaying the kids' boundaries. I said something along the lines of, "It's not inappropriate for the website, you're overreacting, and it's your fault for feeling this way." I then linked to them a non-sexual nudity piece as evidence that such kinds of nudity are still allowed on the website so long as it's not sexualized, which in the context of the rest of the conversation, them establishing that they're uncomfortable with nudity, was incredibly inappropriate of me on all levels. Bear in mind that this was just last year. I was still 22 at the time. I would like to reiterate that the artist in question who made the suggestive artwork has since deleted it, acknowledged that it might have been too much for the website, and learned from it. The next page of the document is a discussion about my general inappropriate conduct as an adult on pixel art. The document includes a lot of things, but chief among them being poor boundaries, not acknowledging the ages of those around me over the years, and inappropriate jokes and behavior. I'll start with my poor boundary issues because this is something that has most apparently been on YouTube, if anywhere else. Something I've noticed when going back and watching old content is just how much I would seek validation through either demeaning myself through things like self-deprecating humor or flagellating myself for doing things wrong and stuff like that. I also used to vent a lot about my mental frustrations, my mental issues, trauma, everything under the sun. In a way, I was offloading my burdens onto people around me and onto my audience. Whether it's feeling validated about my skill or my work, or validated about my feelings about certain feelings I have that I feel guilty for, my history of depression and asking other people for help, or sometimes even occasionally posting things like goodbye or vague statements that made it sound like I was going to kill myself. It's all behavior that I feel is not healthy of someone who's garnered an audience like this. So for everyone watching, everyone who's seen my YouTube content over the years, anyone who's stopped by a live stream, everyone who's seen my art or followed me on pixelart.com or on Discord even, I'm sorry for offloading my mental problems onto those around me. Another big problem with me as an adult on places like pixelart and YouTube is my lack of boundaries regarding people much younger than me. I've come to realize over the years that I'm just a lot older than a lot of the people I was normally chill with. I've heard stories of moderators who I assume to be much older than me end up being as young as like 5 years younger than me. People I used to game with and banter with ended up being 3 years younger than me, which in some cases were when I was 18 and they were as young as 15. Some of these bantering and gaming voice calls often stretch into a bit more inappropriate territory with inappropriate jokes and whatnot. One person in question was known as Punisher for a while, but they've since left pixelart and Discord. As we would game, they would sometimes make inappropriate jokes, sometimes I'd respond in kind, sometimes I'd not know how to respond, so I just wouldn't. I should have shut that down as an adult, but I just kind of let it happen. Another thing I used to do is I would go onto artwork featuring characters I find somewhat attractive, and I would reply something like, "I'd let her kill me," or "would," or "smash." I was a lot younger for the last two. I was around 16 to 18 roughly, back before I knew I was Arrow Ace. But the first one, joking about the person committing violence against me as a form of like attractive aggression of some kind, that has been happening as recently as 2025. I now realize it's kind of inappropriate, and especially if I'm not even aware of the artist's age in question. The document itself is actually a bit more harsh regarding this subject. I specifically make the comparison of my lack of understanding of people's ages around me and the thinking patterns of sexual predators. This will come up later once I'm done explaining the document, but in short, a lot of the points in the document were made especially harsh because I believed it was the right thing to do to take maximum accountability. However, the general thesis of this page still remains pretty true. I, as an adult, should have conducted myself better, and I, as someone much older than people around me, should have conducted myself much better. The next page consists of mostly my extensive past of problematic behaviors, but also mentions things like emotional outbursts, unjustified crash outs, and just being a dick to random people on the internet. Unfortunately, like a lot of people in 2016 to 2017, I picked up a bit of an anti-SJW streak. For those unaware or too young to remember, 2016 to 2017 ended up sparking this movement that became the modern anti-woke movement. Think of like any of the problematic talking points of modern day Fox News, Ben Shapiro, Asmongold, anyone you can think of. I was unfortunately spiraling down the alt-right pipeline. Granted, I was still a kid at the time, like roughly 12 to 14. I still regret this time of my life very much. Also, given the new cultural shift towards taking accountability for your past, I think it would be most pertinent to explain myself here, so that way other people who want to see non-problematic creators without pasts like this make the choice for themselves. I feel it was unfair of me to hide this for so long. Anyways, down to the content of this. In 2016, in one of the PIC community Discord servers, there were some trans and queer folks just having a completely unrelated discussion. I, being the annoying kid that I just explained, saw the flags on their profile and immediately inserted myself into their conversation to be a dick. I said, "We get it, you vape. We get it, you're gay. It's the same thing, lol." This quote was basically a reference to how people often are performative with how they vape, i.e. if you are performative or flamboyantly gay, then you're annoying to me, essentially. These were a bunch of people just having their own talk, just being chill, and I inserted myself to be a homophobic, transphobic dickhead. That's just one of the instances I can recall from online. In truth, I was a lot worse in person offline. Things like at church, I would say things very homophobic. I would talk down about people with disabilities. I would talk down about things like feminism in school. There was even one instance where I called someone the homophobic F-slur as an insult. This was in 2020. This was much too recent to be excused. Funnily enough, this only occurred after years of being the victim of homophobia myself, so I knowingly put someone else through the same hurt I had experienced, just making it doubly wrong. I was old enough to know better. I should have known better. Funnily enough, despite me blaming church and my upbringing for this for so long, it was actually people like a priest in my LDS church and my father who spoke to me and got me to see out of this rut. Just a couple mature conversations were enough to change my mind for the better and help me stop being a hateful bigot. In the document, I discuss examples of people whose content I consumed and people whose talking points I spread as a better example of my other problematic behaviors. One of them was a link to a talk with Ben Shapiro in which he denies the existence of systemic racism, and a mention of the Quartering, who I was unfortunately a fan of from 2016 to 2020 or so. Very strong warning for topics such as abuse of someone who can't defend themselves, abuse of someone with disabilities, and general ableism. When I was much younger, I was diagnosed with autism as young as 3 years old. I grew up extremely insecure about my autism because I felt it was a vulnerability that I needed to hide. This often manifested as me denying help for it, me looking down on other people who have it, and me believing myself to be one of the good ones or something of that sort. This most unfortunately culminated in a time in kindergarten when I was 6 years old. There was an autistic kid who was nonverbal named Alex. He was a poor kid who couldn't communicate, couldn't take care of himself, and often needed help. I, seeing a vulnerable kid with a disability I looked down on, saw him as a punching bag. Whenever the teachers left the room or whenever he went to the back of the classroom where no one could see or hear, I would roughhouse with him and beat him up. This poor kid who had no way to defend himself, no way to communicate with anyone around him, no way to protect himself. This is still one of my worst regrets. Beating up someone who could not defend themselves at all. Someone who couldn't even ask for help. While my ableism never reached that level of violent hatefulness again, I was still very hateful regarding it for so long. It took until high school when I was bullied for my own disabilities and mental issues. Now I rightfully only feel rage and anger towards myself and just sorry for that poor kid who deserved so much better. The last few things on this page are much less heavy, but still pretty egregious. I have a very long history of crashing out on people unprovoked or undeservingly so. One that comes to mind is under my drawing called Drip Dragon. A evidently very young and stupid kid commented under the drawing, "I hope you die." I then responded to this kid, "I hope you live long enough to witness the death of everything and everyone you love." In retrospect, looking back on what was evidently just a random little kid being stupid on the internet, it was very extreme of me and unjustified. While, yeah, saying you should die on the internet is kind of a dick move, this was evidently a kid being stupid on the internet, and I, as the adult, should have been the bigger person and just left it alone. Another one that comes to mind is a random person on a random one of my posts commented the Walter meme. For those unaware, it was a meme where they dub over the voice of someone from Breaking Bad with an impression and then just make a sex joke. So under my joke post, this kid was making a joke, and then I crashed out on them. I asked, "Are you a Pyrocynical fan or are you just unfunny?" And then they deleted their comment. It was frankly a dick move of me. This was a kid trying to be funny, and I was being a dick for no reason, essentially. Being an internet funny man myself, having experienced being called unfunny, that stings. It stays with you. The last example of a crash out I have is one between me and a user named Pixelweeb on pixelart.com. I started a conversation on a fighting game. They came in and we started bantering about whether or not it was a fighting game or something like that. I took grave offense to the idea that my game wasn't considered a fighting game or an adult game, so I kinda just crashed out on this guy for no reason, to be honest. It was kind of friendly banter at first, but I evidently took things way too far as time went on. After they hit me with an amazing "your mom" joke, I essentially called them a pedophile. I heard the word nonce used on UK sides of YouTube, and I threw it around to them as an insult, not actually knowing its definition. I looked up the word just to make sure I was using it right, found out it was slang for pedophile, and instead of apologizing, which I should have done, I then doubled down by calling them a Discord moderator. Discord moderator at the time had a bit more of a pedophilic undertone. So essentially, I crashed out on a guy for calling a fighting game dumb by calling him a pedophile and doubling down. It was very unjustified on my end, and I'm gravely sorry for this. My apologies to everyone I unjustifiably crashed out on over the years, and I'm also sorry for all those who had to deal with my hateful rhetoric, and I owe an apology to everyone who has ever dealt with such levels of discrimination and prejudice. I'm also very sorry for anyone who's ever experienced any level of abuse of any kind. The last thing on this page is a little segment about my past of tracing on places like pixelart.com. While definitely not the most egregious example of my behavior over the years, I feel it's something people should know given my whole history as an artist. It also better helps to contextualize my past of obsessing over things like tracing investigations and AI investigations. I also would like to apologize for making excuses for myself back then. Tracing without crediting the artist is just kind of a dick move all the time. The next page is about my history of having poor boundaries, both with random strangers online and with friends. It includes things like me being emotionally dependent on people, me inserting myself into other people's conversations, or just being very oversharing regarding my life or other people's lives online. While I can't remember that many examples of it, it has become a repeated pattern I've noticed with myself online, and it's something that other people's experiences has brought to my attention. Two very clear examples I can think of are when someone was having a mental breakdown and I stepped in, and when someone was asking for donations for their charity fund and I donated publicly with my name visible. The former, a friend of mine had a messy breakup and they were publicly crashing out a little bit. I decided to jump in because I told myself the person I want to be would step in and do something about this, instead of just wanting to help a friend out of principle. That friend, while actively crashing out, then told me that I wasn't stepping in to help them, but because I was stepping in to look good. I've come to realize that they were right. I only stepped in to inflate my ego, to make myself look better. I should have just let them cool down naturally instead of stepping in when they were obviously crashing out. But instead, I decided to make it about me and inserted myself into the situation again. This has become a bit of a repeated pattern across my time on the internet. Whether it's jumping into discourse that doesn't involve me, speaking over the voices of people who want to be heard, or just jumping in and making a situation about me. It's just very awkward, very shameful, very unself-aware behavior, and for that I'm very, very sorry. And I'm sorry to that particular friend for making their breakdown about me, essentially. The last story of this page comes from a mutual artist on pixel art. This artist created a GoFundMe to raise funds for their education. I donated $100 to this fund, which at the time was the highest donation, but I had left my public name on the donation so that way they knew exactly where it came from. I want to be clear, this was a mistake. It's just a poor boundary to expect to be praised by donating to someone you hardly even know. It comes with this kind of gross undertone of "you owe me," which can be exploited, unfortunately. It is well-intentioned but misguided at best, and it is gross, selfish, and exploitive at worst. I'm sorry to the artist for creating that kind of atmosphere. I hope you have a good education. Last thing I want to note on this page is stuff that's not explicitly stated in the document, but I want to explain that my poor boundaries often extended to those much younger than me as well. Whether it's explaining my life to people on stream or talking about my mental problems publicly online, I just kind of created this sort of dependence upon my audience, including those much, much younger than me. And that kind of dependence on people much younger than you, for whom you don't really think of much, it's a kind of dangerous line to walk, and for that, I'm very sorry for creating that kind of environment. I'm also sorry to my friends who have also dealt with a lot of my boundary issues over the years. There was frankly so much I have said online that I should have held my tongue about, especially about my friends or acquaintances online. Their life is both not my story to tell and none of my business, unless specified otherwise. My next page is about my toxic outlook on art, improvement, and how that's affected other people around me. It extends to things like being puritanical about pixel art techniques, having an ego about my art skill, ranking people as artists, which is not kind at all, and just generally being very cynical about art in general. Trying to find an objective metric to rank pixel art in general is just extremely misguided, because the entire point of art is the expression and freedom it provides. The ultimate end result of going down this path of just pure improvement is just you lose the humanity that makes your art art. It makes your art less appealing to you and your audience over time. A part of what actually started my self-improvement process in pixel art was actually the criticism of people I looked up to, people who I now realize shared this kind of toxic outlook on art in general. This sort of self-supremacist imposing idea that their way is the objective correct way to create things. I've come to realize that I've become that figure for other people now. I gave people criticism that crushed them. I told people they would never amount to anything. I asked for people to push themselves to a breaking point. I told people that they had to prove themselves to earn my respect. And frankly, it is a poisonous mentality. It corrupts what you love into something you hate, and it inevitably makes the stuff you create worse. Because what does toxic perfectionism do other than just stop people from making things at all? This all culminated in 2019 to 2020 when I started doing these artist tier lists. While it started as a semi-ironic bit, it ultimately culminated into tier lists which ranked people in an attempt to achieve an objective ranking of the best pixel artists, which was just frankly callous and mean to everyone on it. While, yes, in those tier lists I did uplift some people and talk about artists who I believed deserved more spotlight, it ultimately was at the expense of a lot of people. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and I built up almost my entire art process on comparison. I then spread that toxic, poisonous philosophy to other people by comparing people on tier lists and in backhanded compliments and the like. I'd like to apologize to my audience of my early streaming career and all those people I have met online on pixel art or pic that I have then compared their work to others with. I'm also sorry to the friends and art collaborators who I voice chatted with, and in those voice chats I was also toxically perfectionist. The next page covers my extensive past of communication breakdowns with projects I was leading. Essentially, I would make myself the center of attention by trying to create a community project of some kind, and then I would fail the leadership check and cause it to die off very early. There were also some solo projects of mine which I also failed a skill check for, causing them to end up crashing and burning. These include many projects from the Pixel SMP Among Us event, to art contests, to the GOAT project, and even my old pixel art documentary, the Pixel Art Timeline project. One major cause of this I've found is my toxic perfectionism and criticism. Since we already talked about the toxic perfectionism angle, I'll just talk about my past of having poor responses to criticism. Sometimes people would criticize projects I'm working on, and instead of heeding their advice and taking it into account, I would just ignore it, go my own way, at which it would crash and burn because of said glaring issue. In my personal life, this often manifested as long-standing grudges against people who gave me pretty valid criticism. Whether it was perceiving an online relationship as beef from a certain point, or just getting irrationally upset about something and then avoiding it altogether. Whether it was shit-talking people behind their back, or just invisible stuff that no one knew about, I was still holding irrational resentment towards people who probably did not deserve it at all. I'd like to apologize to specifically Arby and Pixel Knight in this respect, both of whom gave me criticism at some point in time, and I held it over their head internally, and sometimes externally as an open distaste for them. I think it's fair to say that, given what I myself have perpetuated and done, I am no person to talk down or dislike people because of some criticism. I myself have done things far worse than either of these two, and for that, I'm incredibly sorry to both of them for being a dick. The next page is about my laziness, both as a person, a friend, and a creator online. In regards to being a poor friend, I'm very lazy with maintaining relationships. I often ghost people, sandbag conversations with 1 or 2 word answers, and generally rely on my friends making the first move instead of ever initiating anything. It is a frankly parasitic and very dependent relationship that no one deserves to be trapped in. It's rude, thoughtless, cruel, and self-centered to the people who care about me the most. While this may sound like transactional thinking, that X input equals Y output, it is ultimately how relationships work. All relationships are give and take. But when I continue to take and take and take without giving anything, I'm just dragging people down, being dead weight. This unfortunately manifested with a particular friendship at one point in time. You might be familiar with Sauce Waffle, or Brio, a former moderator on pixelart.com. We've had an extensive history of friendly communication over the years. However, once they became a moderator, my relationship with them kind of shifted. Instead of friendly chatting or banter or anything that we used to do, I'd mainly just go to them for moderator stuff. Looking back at our group chats and DMs over the last couple months they were on pixel art, I feel bad. They probably felt used or neglected as a friend. I'm sorry to all my online and offline friends over the years for both perpetually sandbagging conversation, essentially cutting off contact via ghosting, or just being very lazy regarding maintaining contact and maintaining a relationship in general. I'm particularly sorry for Brio, though, for both neglecting our friendship until it died and using you in our last months of contact. You were far more than a moderator. You were a person with a whole life, and I hope that life is great outside of pixel art. Hope you and Eclipse are doing well. As for the laziness regarding my projects, this is fundamentally a me issue. Just to be clear, me mentioning this here isn't to say it's as severe or anywhere near as severe as anything else I've mentioned here. This is mainly just a disclosure for the audience, particularly on YouTube. Simply put, I get trapped in a dopamine cycle where I'd rather do something more entertaining to me, like play a video game or watch YouTube videos, rather than working on the things I promised I would work on. As a result, I end up with thousands upon thousands of hours in video games or watching YouTube videos, and my projects sit unfinished for months at a time, sometimes years. I know that slow releases is kind of a thing for YouTubers, like, it's the common joke that some YouTubers take years to upload, but in all honesty, I really don't have an excuse here. Frankly, I have so much more free time than many people can even dream of, and the fact that I have all this extra time despite having a job, I still don't do the things I said I would do. I'm sorry to my audience for both wasting your time over the years and for my many, many hollow promises over the years. The next page is particularly heavy. Viewer discretion is advised for topics such as abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, and severe mental illness. I'm going to roughly quote the majority of the last 2 pages here. My apologies if I get certain things in the document wrong. I have a bit of dyslexia and brain fog, and I often have to read while thinking on the fly, filling in words that probably don't exist. Feel free to read it on screen yourself, or feel free to look in the description for the document itself. Quote, a big reason why I never came out about most of this until now is because I just had it twisted in my head that it was okay to ignore it because of XYZ. Whether it was me telling myself it was fine to not tell anyone because I deleted it, or I was just a stupid kid at the time, or I apologized even though I was making excuses the whole time, so it's fine. Either because of things I did after, or because of who I was, or because of who I am now, or because of what happened to me, or because of my intent, that I was exempt from being wrong, and worst of all, the most disgusting and subtle and insidiously agreeable excuse of all, it's best if I just carry on and try to be better in the future. On the surface, it sounds like sound advice, but what makes it so dangerous is it discounts everything a person has done. You can't change the past, but you can change the future, and yet I still hurt people. I was lying to myself that it's all okay, that if I just become a better person in the future. But I carried on without addressing anything. I didn't apologize in earnest. I didn't take the effort to better myself, and I didn't take the time to think about the consequences of what I had done. It was procrastinating the act of being a good person to soothe my guilt. To be completely honest, a lot has happened to me in the past. Physical, mental, sexual abuse, being in not safe for work spaces as a minor surrounded by people far older than me, exposure to extreme sexual content as online, as young as 4 years old, homophobia, religious cult-like indoctrination, porn addiction, severe mental illness, delusion, pain, victimized by bigots and ableists. I've been through so much of what I inflicted upon others over the years, and yet I still made those choices. Despite everything I had been through, I spread my pornographic art online to people younger than me. I still abused the trust of people around me for my own sexual validation. I spread my toxic philosophies. I made excuses, and it ultimately hurt people. Everything I've been through doesn't make anything I did okay. Countless victims have suffered the same abuse as I have, but they didn't hurt people like I did. Countless of them lived long and prosperous lives after, never once perpetuating the same things they endured. Many even acknowledge the wider problem and fight it at its source through things like advocacy, litigation, addressing systemic concerns, or giving advice to people in their same position. I don't bring up my past to bring sympathy or sway public opinion or to wring out a droplet of forgiveness of all the people I've hurt. I bring it up to say this. While many of us have endured great suffering, we still possess agency. If anyone reading this happens to have a similar story to my own, please hear this and heed my warnings. Do not follow in my footsteps. Do not make excuses for yourself if you fuck up. Do not bite your tongue regarding things you have done. Keep in mind the safety of others in every action you take. You are not your abusers, so please do the right thing. The final page of the document opens with an open apology to all those involved, as well as many of the undocumented and unknown people involved as well. After the apology is a conclusion, which brings back the main thesis of the document itself, and my at the time plan moving forward. My intentions with the document were to A, be open and honest regarding my past, so that way other people can come to a conclusion, without me hiding anything, essentially. And B, to help other people see their own toxic behaviors and maybe curb that, or help other people administrate or moderate these behaviors on public platforms like pixel art. Key parts of the plan moving forward were removing myself as a public figure, i.e. I stop uploading YouTube videos and I stop making art on pixel art and talking on social medias, and also move forward without fostering a private community. These things are still true in essence, because it is my plan to leave pixel art, and it is my plan to leave YouTube eventually as well. I just want to fulfill all my obligations first, fulfill all my promises, and then leave the public life behind. In regards to pixel art though, I want to be clear that I'm not leaving to run away from the document and what I've done. The document is still pinned, albeit slightly amended, on my pixel art page, with comments from people involved, and I'm still willing to answer questions regarding it. That said, my public presence on pixel art will be toned down. I'm trying to keep comments to a bare minimum, mostly just responding to friends or if other people ask me about the document or my past. There will be no new artwork or art posts or sharing art of any kind. There will be one caveat to this, and it's going to involve the future pixel art documentary. I'm going to be polling a lot of pixel art users en masse regarding information and demographic data, just clarifying ahead of time that all the information that will be collected will be anonymous and not include any personal details. And I will share the pixel art documentary on pixel art once it releases. Once the documentary is completed, I will then leave pixel art as a whole. As for this YouTube channel as well, I do intend to retire this channel entirely once I'm done with my next 3 projects. I just want to be absolutely clear on both pixel art and YouTube. I am not retiring because of anyone or anything anyone has done or what has occurred in the document necessarily. It's more so my own general dissatisfaction with how I personally used my audience. This decision was made solely by me, without the influence of anyone else. So please do not attack, harass, or bully anyone regarding anything both in the document and regarding my YouTube channel and my decision. When I released the document on pixelart.com specifically, many of the people involved have since come forward about it. Specifically, the friend I mentioned at the beginning of the document, the one whose experience they shared, sparked the creation of the document. It turns out they were mainly not referring to me. I was simply over-paranoid and perceived the whole post as a direct criticism towards me, rather than the actual anonymous stalkers and parasocial weirdos that the post was mainly referring to. So, a lot of the perceived damage that they talked about in one of their posts that I thought was referring to how my actions affected them, they were actually referring to someone else. In a sense, I was making their experience with parasocial stalkers and weirdos about myself. For that, I am terribly sorry to them and everyone who has to experience such things. I'm also sorry for worrying anyone by having effectively a paranoid breakdown in the document. Kind of ironic that part of the document was how I made my mental struggles the burden of those around me, and then I promptly made the document in a fit of mental struggle, and then made people who were innocent in all this feel bad for it. The last thing I want to mention regarding this friend's experience, if anyone who reads the document goes and searches for that post, please do so in earnest. Please do not harass them about it. Please do not blame them for the document or my problems. And please uplift their message regarding safety and distance online. Their story is an important one, but it is not mine to share or misconstrue. Another person indirectly named in the document has since also come forward and stated that my actions did not cause such distress that I imagined it did. I also unintentionally mischaracterized them by assuming intent to actions that were unintentional. That person's name and my mischaracterization of them have since been removed from the document. Just to be clear, me removing their names is not because I'm not sorry for them or anything. It's mainly to reduce any harm that could come from the document. I just simply don't want them to get flack for my mistakes and my errors and my misjudgments that occurred in the creation of the document. Another friend has since stepped forward and also clarified that my actions did not have such consequential effects to them. Their name has been removed as well, but I'm keeping the instance in the document as well because I believe they were still correct, regardless if the statement was made under duress or unintentionally. Please do not send any hate or harassment to this person. What they said was while they were under extreme stress, and they've since gone back and apologized for it, even if I still agree with what they said. Frankly, regardless of if they were doing so to be mean or not, it was something that I needed to hear. As for the wider audience of pixel art and my followers on pixel art, the reception has been profoundly humbling and moving. To be a little unserious here, it felt like that scene from The Boys where Homelander just lasers a harmless protester and then the crowd starts cheering. I was not expecting people to be so forgiving. While I am profoundly grateful for many of the positive messages, I still believe deep down that I have work to do. While many have already forgiven me for my past, I still feel like I have a lot to do before I earn my own forgiveness, if that makes sense. While some who have forgiven me are willing to open contact again, I still feel that distance would be healthy for everyone involved. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is I'd like to apologize to everyone for specifically how I released the document and when, and a couple of the errors that it entailed. One of these things being a subtle puritanical undertone to my discussions about posting not safe for work art online in general. The wording made it sound like having feelings or urges in of itself was the issue, rather than the conduct specifically regarding it. It both deflected from the initial conversation of the document itself, and also sent strays to a bunch of people who frankly did not deserve it. I feel it fundamentally stemmed from my insecurities and conflicted feelings regarding my own sexual past and sexuality in general. It's like the meme says, we get a little freaky sometimes, and that's okay. But you gotta do it in the right way and not hurt anyone, like I did. A work of art regarding this kind of sexual shame that comes to mind is this short film called, bear with me for a second here, Horny. While not pornographic or sexually gratifying in nature, I recommend this short film only for people of 18 years or older, but the short film really dives into conflicted and shameful feelings regarding sex like this. Can't believe I watched that whole short film and then a couple years later I still made the document the way I did. I'm sorry, that's my bad. This next one is perhaps the most important regarding the document itself, and that is I'm sorry to all those who I ended up worrying because of it. A big reason why I made the document in the first place is because I noticed a repeated pattern throughout my time on the internet of me making my own personal struggles the burden of those around me, specifically in regards to my instability, my mental problems, and my own mistakes. In the creation of the document, I had inadvertently become the burden of those around me again. I made other people's experiences about myself, and I made other people worry about me. Through the creation of the document, I also ended up bringing out a lot of hard conversations among my friends and people affected in the document itself. I'm sorry to the friendly acquaintance who sparked the document. Through an unrelated post, I ended up making them feel stressed out because I thought their post was about me. I am incredibly sorry for what I have done. The last thing I want to talk about here is why I made the document, why I made the document the way I did, and why I made this video and the way I did. The final reason why I made the document was simply because I was unsatisfied with myself and my public persona. While the document was initially started in a fit of paranoia over a catastrophic misunderstanding, I fundamentally still believe that the document was the right thing to do. Maybe not everything it entailed, especially regarding massive assumptions about other people or how other people feel about me, but I still personally felt like I wasn't holding myself accountable and other people were giving me the benefit of the doubt to a lot of stuff that I feel is worthy of criticism. I can practically hear Nicholas Diorio in the back of my head going, "Why are you saying any of this? You couldn't pay me to say this." And to this, I simply ask you, the viewer, if you thought in earnest that burning everything you've built up over the past 10, maybe 12 years or so was the right thing to do, would you do it? I think this question has a lot of valid different answers. Either, no, I don't have the full story yet. No, I've worked so hard to build this up, even if there's some toxic threads at the roots. Maybe I can still make something great out of this. Or if it's, yes, I would because it's the right thing to do. Or yes, I would because I owe it to the people. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer here. I think it's more so the way you go about it. I am simply someone who chose to burn it all down because I thought it was the right thing to do. While it evidently wasn't the best execution, I still don't regret making the document as a whole. It started me on a whole lot of personal journeys that I'm still walking through. It let me properly confront things about myself that I'd been holding back or giving myself the benefit of the doubt on, and it further directed me into a new journey of bettering myself in ways I hadn't conceived of before. It allowed me to swallow my pride and apologize to many people I've hurt, and helped me learn to better navigate these problems in the future. As for explaining why the document was written the way it was, and why I refuse to give myself the benefit of the doubt a lot, it simply goes down to functionalism and consequentialism. Functionalism, outside of philosophy specifically, is about how one action can effectively be another action, regardless of intent. It's sort of like how rope can functionally be glue and vice versa, because rope sticks things together and glue sticks things together. If they functionally serve the same purpose, there is an argument to be made that they are effectively one and the same, especially if this includes consequentialism. Consequentialism is specifically philosophy regarding consequences and how they should be avoided. So, if one action functionally serves to create consequences of another action, they can effectively be equal and therefore equally viable to deride. This is why I included the word grooming in the document, even though by the literal sense, this isn't really the case. The reason why I shared my not safe for work artwork online as a minor is specifically because I wanted validation that my feelings regarding sexual content weren't an error of me, i.e., I wasn't sick for wanting to make sexual content. With the lens of functional consequentialism, this can be viewed as an act of grooming, because I am aiming to create circumstances wherein my sexual content is accepted, both internally with me and externally with people validating my feelings about it. That is effectively grooming. I exposed younger people to sexual artwork, all in the purpose of creating an environment wherein my sexual artwork was accepted. A big issue with this philosophy when making the document, though, was that it often backfired. Either it was me taking myself in the absolute worst possible light, thus making people who know me very, very concerned, and it can also come off as trying to diminish what that word means, like I'm calling something that's not grooming, grooming, for the sake of making what I actually did look less bad. I was essentially steel-manning the argument against me for the sake of taking maximum accountability, but in the process of that, I ended up diminishing what the word itself meant, and thus what all the victims of it had suffered through. Once again, though, that does not excuse anything I've done, both mentioned in the document and in creating the document itself. So once again, to anyone who's read the document, and anyone mentioned in the document in those parts specifically, my apologies. The final part of this video is going to be much less serious and more so just talking about the entirety of my time on YouTube and what I plan on doing going forward. This part isn't really going to address much, and because, this is a very serious situation deserving of the respect it deserves, if you don't want to hear any of this, I don't mind if you click off the video. Feel free. A wise man once said that if you can't do YouTube despite having a full-time job, then you should just quit. It might sound like some hardcore red pill grind set advice, but it's kind of true, because the current landscape of YouTube is so much more different than it used to be. So much of the landscape now just focuses on shilling out as much content as humanly possible, or just pulling the slot machine enough times so you get that 1 in a million chance and you get boosted to the top of the algorithm for a day. That, or you just slowly accrue a bunch of people willing to pay you money every month just so you can keep doing what you love. I found, after getting a job that's not even full-time, I truly don't think I'm cut out for this YouTube stuff. I don't have it in me to pull the slot machine a billion times. I don't have it in me to post every month to warrant a monthly subscription. And I don't have it in me to really make this a career at all. Ever since I was a kid, ever since I was around 10 years old, all I wanted to be was a YouTuber. Funnily enough, the very name I made for myself, the very name I use online, I created it as my first Minecraft account username explicitly because I wanted to be a Minecraft YouTuber. As I've evolved as a creative over the years, I've wanted to do so many things on YouTube, but I just never had it in me to manifest any of it. All these lofty ambitions with massive, massive budgets, just editing masterpieces, creating animations, all of it. And I just never got to it. I've had a YouTube account for almost 6 years now, and I still couldn't find it in me to make any of these giga passion projects a reality. A big reason why I wanted to do YouTube so bad is because I wanted to make money doing what I loved. However, the way I was going with these massive projects that I would never complete, it was never in the cards to make money this way. Truthfully, I do want to make this crazy ambitious stuff. I do want to talk about things I earnestly love, and I do want to share the joy with other people. For the longest time, the fear of putting all this effort into something, only to watch it fail or crumble and fall, it kind of got to me. The pressure of living up to not only what everyone else believed I would create, but also what I myself thought I should. I was constraining myself to a lot of things that often hurt the projects in the long run. I would nitpick each and every little flaw of a video I would make to the point where I'd just not even bother editing it anymore. And then a project that people were really looking forward to would just never come to be. Looking back, I regret canceling a lot of these projects so much, like the Roguelands video, or the Pokemon Shiny Lock, or the Randomizer Nuzlocke, even if I would fail. I can't help but look back on a lot of my earlier creations, both as an artist and as a YouTuber. I didn't care if I was perceived as cringe. I didn't care if the editing was bad, literally made in Windows Movie Maker. It was fun. It was like my own little secret hobby that no one knew. It wasn't a defining character trait of me. It wasn't a lifelong goal. It was just something I did for fun. It was more earnest and strangely fulfilling, more than anything I made after. If I'm ever going to continue YouTube again, it's going to be much more in the vein of my older content. Not necessarily in terms of quality, but more so in terms of spontaneity, lack of theming, and just unrestrained freedom. For a while now, I've considered making a secondary quote-unquote slop channel where I just talk about stuff. No need for crazy editing, no need for constant improving my craft or anything, just a side channel of quote-unquote lower quality content to just pump out every week or so. Not necessarily under the express purpose of making money, but making content in a way that I both get my enjoyment out of and also is more feasibly likely to make money. I'm still kinda iffy on it though. I have a lot on my plate still, and frankly, I'm not really in a spot to be making another YouTube channel, but it's just a thought. As for the future of this channel itself, I honestly do plan to stop uploading here soon. Not like that was really going to change much, but I think it's better to just have that out in the open, so that way no one has these expectations of coming back to me 20 years later to new content or anything. I have 3 major things I really, really want to make before I close this channel for good, though. One of them in particular is actually quite close to completion. A big reason why I'm even talking about my channel at all after all the serious stuff at the beginning of this video is mainly just so people aren't caught off guard when I post a new video sometime relatively soon. I'm aware doing some self-promo stuff after all of that serious addressing situation shenanigans earlier on is a bit of a bad move, realistically. But I'd figure if I'm gonna speak to you, the audience, anywhere, it might as well be the 50-minute Yap Sesh video. The production of the pixel art documentary is still in extensive planning phase. I promise I'll get to work on it much more after the following video comes out. Just know that the document really did set the documentary back in a lot of ways, mainly in my plans for what I wanted to do. I really wanted to invite a lot of community members to collaborate in the project and commission a lot of artists from pixel art and beyond as an homage to the community itself. However, evidently I have a lot of problems that might get other people in hot water. I don't want people to find the documentary on my page, scroll down, see me addressing a situation, and then assume that everybody who's ever worked with me is going to be part of or condoning what I've done. So the documentary will largely be just me with my camera, me animating, and licensing established artists and bands for the soundtrack. In the event of if an artist does desire to be commissioned or does desire to collab with me for this project, I'll be sure to let them know the full extent of what I've owned up to on here in this video and in the document as well, so they know what they're getting into. But as of now, me doing it alone is currently the plan. As for what the third and final project will be, frankly, I don't really want to disclose it publicly yet for the sake of managing my own and community expectations. Once I have more work done on this project to the point where I can feel it is close to releasing, then I will discuss it more. Anyways, until then, thank you all so much for watching and listening, and please, if you'd like to, please ask any questions in the comments down below. I will try to answer as many as I can. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.